I still remember the first time I saw it. Oumuamua, the first confirmed object from outside our solar system. My hands were shaking as I adjusted the telescope controls in the observation deck of Lunar Station 3. The coffee in my mug had gone cold hours ago, but I couldn't tear myself away from the feed. On the screen, it didn't look like much. A faint glint stretched like a needle of light tumbling end over end through the cosmic dark. But there was something different about the way it moved. It wasn't random. It wasn't natural. It felt deliberate, like every spin had a purpose, like every rotation was calculated. I'd been tracking unusual objects for 3 years as part of the Deep Space Monitoring Network, cataloguing asteroids and comets that strayed too close to Earth's orbital path. Most were routine, chunks of ice and rock following predictable trajectories governed by Newton's laws and millions of years of gravitational influence. This was different. This was wrong in ways that made my stomach clench with a mixture of excitement and dread. When the first data came in from the automated analysis systems, I felt my chest tighten. Its speed was incredible, already past the orbit of Mars, travelling at over 26 kilometers per second relative to the Sun. It was moving on its way out before we'd even had a chance to properly look at it, escaping our solar system like it had somewhere urgent to be. But what froze me wasn't how fast it was leaving, it was how. It wasn't slowing down like an asteroid that had lost momentum to solar radiation pressure, not like a comet being pushed by outgassing from solar heating. It was adjusting, accelerating in tiny increments, as if responding to something we couldn't see or detect. The object's trajectory showed non-gravitational acceleration, something that should have been impossible for a simple asteroid. The deviation was small, barely detectable, but it was there in the data, undeniable and inexplicable. Back on Earth, the debates exploded across scientific forums and news networks within hours. Astronomers argued it was just outgassing, frozen hydrogen or exotic ices, sublimating and releasing invisible jets of gas that could account for the acceleration. The more conservative scientists published papers proposing that it was composed of unusual materials that reacted to solar radiation in unexpected ways. But in the quiet corners of observatories and research stations, others whispered the word no one wanted to say too loudly: probe. I was just a junior flight officer on the Horizon Breaker, a deep space research vessel that barely qualified for assignments beyond the asteroid belt. At 28, I was the youngest member of the crew, still trying to prove myself worthy of the trust that had been placed in me when they assigned me to the navigation team. My background was in xenogeology, the study of rocks and minerals from other worlds, which made me an unlikely candidate for first contact scenarios. But when the orders came down from Earth Command, intercept course, full burn, maximum priority, I knew this wasn't routine observation. We were chasing something history would never forget. The initial mission briefing was sparse on details, but heavy on urgency. Commander Patricia Hale, a veteran of deep space exploration with 20 years of experience navigating the outer system, gathered the crew in the main conference room 12 hours after we received the orders. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her weathered face serious in the blue glow of the holographic displays, "we've been tasked with intercepting and studying Object 1 I/2017 U1, designated Oumuamua. What you need to know is that this object exhibits characteristics that don't match any natural phenomenon we've previously encountered." She activated the 3D projection, showing Oumuamua's trajectory through our solar system. The red line curved in ways that made conventional orbital mechanics look simple by comparison. The object entered our solar system from the direction of Vega at a velocity suggesting interstellar origin. But here's what makes this interesting. It's not following a hyperbolic escape trajectory like we'd expect from a rogue asteroid. It's making course corrections. The room fell silent except for the low hum of life support systems. Dr. Marcus Chen, our xenoarchaeologist, leaned forward in his chair. "Course corrections? Are we talking about deliberate navigation?" "That's what we're going to find out," Hale replied. "But I want everyone to understand the implications. If this object is under some form of intelligent control, we may be dealing with technology from another star system. This could be humanity's first encounter with non-terrestrial intelligence. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, our communications officer, raised her hand. What are our protocols for that scenario? Hale's expression darkened slightly. Observation and documentation. We approach carefully, we study everything we can, and we report back to Earth Command. Under no circumstances do we attempt direct contact without authorization. The first weeks of pursuit were a masterclass in tedium, punctuated by moments of pure terror. Our ship, the Horizon Breaker, accelerated hard, its fusion engines screaming just to keep up with an object that seemed determined to escape our solar system as quickly as possible. Oumuamua was already ahead of us, slipping away toward the edge of the solar system at a velocity that meant we were fighting against time itself. Every hour, we fell further behind despite our ship's maximum sustainable thrust, our fuel reserves shrinking at a rate that made Chief Engineer Yuki Tanaka nervous. "We're burning through reaction mass faster than planned," she reported during one of our daily briefings. "At this rate, we'll have enough fuel to reach intercept range and conduct basic observations, but the return trip is going to be tight." Commander Hale studied the fuel consumption reports with the kind of intensity that suggested she was calculating more than just numbers. How tight? If we continue current acceleration for another week, we'll have exactly enough fuel for a minimal return burn. Any delays, any extended observations, and we'll be stranded out here hoping for a rescue mission. The weight of that possibility settled over the crew like a shroud. We were already farther from Earth than any human had travelled since the early Mars missions, chasing an object into the outer reaches of the solar system with barely enough fuel to get home. But what disturbed me more than the fuel situation were the subtle anomalies I kept detecting in Oumuamua's behaviour. I couldn't explain why, but the trajectory felt wrong in ways that went beyond simple physics. There were tiny adjustments, micro changes in direction that couldn't be explained by gravitational influence or the kind of outgassing that might affect a comet. The object curved, slightly but measurably, like a ship making minor course corrections to maintain an optimal path. When I brought my concerns to Commander Hale, she laughed, but there was no humour in it. "It's a rock, Blake. A very unusual rock from another star system, but still just a rock. Rocks don't steer." But 3 days later, the instruments proved me right. Oumuamua had shifted again, a deviation barely noticeable, but significant enough that our predictive models completely broke down. The course it was taking wasn't just away from the sun anymore, it was lining up with something, a trajectory that, when extrapolated, pointed toward the constellation Cygnus and the general direction of several nearby star systems. That's when things on the ship started to change in ways that made everyone nervous. At first, it was the communications array. Our long-range sensors began picking up a faint signal, a low-frequency hum buried under layers of cosmic background radiation and solar interference. The signal was so subtle that our automated systems initially dismissed it as equipment noise, but Dr. Kim, who had an almost supernatural ability to detect patterns in electromagnetic chaos, noticed that the hum wasn't random. "It's periodic," she announced during our evening briefing, pulling up spectral analysis charts that showed the signal's structure. "Perfectly regular intervals like a heartbeat, and it's getting stronger as we get closer to the object." Lieutenant Santos, our ship's pilot, frowned at the data. Could it be some kind of natural phenomenon, rotating magnetic field maybe? Kim shook her head. "I've analysed rotating neutron star signals, magnetar emissions, even the radio signatures of planets with strong magnetic fields. This is different. It's too regular, too structured. And watch this." She manipulated the display to show the signal's frequency pattern over time. The intervals are changing, slowly but measurably. It's like the signal is adapting. That word hung in the recycled air of the conference room like a curse. Natural phenomena didn't adapt. They followed predictable patterns governed by physics and chemistry. Adaptation implied intelligence, decision-making, purpose. Then came the dreams. Ever since we crossed Saturn's orbit, I'd been experiencing the same recurring dream every night. Always the same image. I stood in the center of a vast city made of stone pillars that rose around me like a forest of impossible architecture. The pillars weren't crude stone structures, but intricately carved towers that spiraled upward in mathematical patterns that hurt to look at directly, stretching until they touched stars that burned with colors I'd never seen before. And in the absolute silence of that place, I could hear a sound, the same low hum we were detecting on our communications array. The dream was so vivid, so consistent, that I began sketching the architecture during my off-duty hours. The patterns seemed familiar, like half-remembered equations or geometric principles I'd encountered in my xenogeology studies, but couldn't quite place. When I mentioned it over breakfast in the ship's cramped mess hall, the room went still. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Half the crew looked away uncomfortably. The other half nodded, with expressions of relief and growing concern. They'd been dreaming it too. Same pillars? Dr. Chen asked quietly. Same spirals reaching toward the stars, Lieutenant Santos confirmed. Same absolute silence except for that damn humming, Chief Tanaka added. Commander Hale ordered us to stop talking about it immediately. Mass suggestion, she declared, though her hands shook slightly as she spoke. We're all under stress, breathing recycled air, dealing with the psychological pressure of deep space exploration. Shared dreams are a documented phenomenon in isolated environments. But her explanation felt thin, inadequate for the precision and consistency of what we were all experiencing. The dreams weren't vague impressions or anxiety-driven nightmares. They were detailed, architectural blueprints of structures that seemed designed according to principles no human civilization had ever conceived. By the time we closed within 1,000,000 kilometers of Oumuamua, the object no longer looked like a natural asteroid. Through our high-resolution telescopes and enhanced imaging systems, its shape became more defined, more intentional. Long and narrow like a shard of metal torn from some vast machine, its surface reflected sunlight in ways that suggested artificial construction rather than natural formation. The reflection patterns were too uniform, too geometric, like light bouncing off manufactured plating that had been weathered and scarred by eons of travel through interstellar space. Dr. Chen spent hours analyzing the spectroscopic data, trying to determine the object's composition and structure. The surface material doesn't match anything in our database, he reported. It's not rocky like an asteroid, not icy like a comet. The reflectivity suggests metal, but the spectral lines don't correspond to any known metallic compounds. Could it be an alloy we haven't seen before? I asked. Possibly, or it could be something that doesn't occur naturally in our solar system, something manufactured. The word manufactured hung in the air like a physical presence. We were potentially looking at the first artifact created by non-human intelligence, a piece of technology from another star system that had traveled for millennia to reach our solar system. It's just a comet, Commander Hale kept repeating, but her voice carried less conviction each time. The evidence was mounting that we were dealing with something unprecedented, something that challenged every assumption we'd made about our place in the universe. The moment that shattered any remaining doubt came as we crossed Neptune's orbit, still pursuing the rapidly receding object. Our long-range sensors picked up a signal that made everyone on the bridge freeze in stunned silence. It was a pulse. Low frequency, broad spectrum, unmistakably deliberate. Not directed at Earth, not directed at us. Directed outward toward the constellation Cygnus, broadcast with enough power to be detectable across interstellar distances. We listened in absolute silence as the signal stretched into the dark, a complex pattern that repeated 3 times before vanishing completely. Oumuamua wasn't trying to communicate with us. It was calling to something further out in the galaxy, something waiting in the space between the stars. For the first time in my life, I wished I'd stayed behind on Earth, safe in the familiar confines of human civilization, because this felt fundamentally wrong. Not discovery in the traditional sense, not wonder at the mysteries of the cosmos. This felt like we had stumbled into someone else's conversation, intercepted a message we were never meant to hear. We weren't at the end of a journey of exploration, we were standing at the beginning of someone else's plan. The fuel situation was becoming critical, but Commander Hale seemed unwilling to acknowledge the growing danger. "We have enough for intercept and return," she kept insisting during our briefings, though the numbers on Chief Tanaka's reports told a different story. We could reach Oumuamua and conduct basic observations, or we could make it home safely. The margin for error had disappeared completely. The object had changed course again overnight, the third major adjustment since we'd begun our pursuit. Each time, it seemed to anticipate our trajectory, calculating where we would be and positioning itself accordingly. The course corrections weren't random defensive maneuvers, they were deliberate, strategic, as if something was guiding the object with perfect knowledge of our capabilities and intentions. Dr. Chen had stopped trying to explain the behavior through natural phenomena. "Outgassing doesn't work in patterns like this," she told me privately during one of our off-duty conversations. "And it certainly doesn't respond to external stimuli with this level of precision. Whatever's controlling that object knows we're here." The crew was splitting into two distinct camps, the believers and the deniers. Most of the senior officers, led by Commander Hale, clung to increasingly elaborate explanations for the anomalous behavior. Solar radiation pressure interacting with unusual surface materials, magnetic field interactions with the interplanetary medium, exotic ice sublimation creating thrust vectors we didn't understand. But the younger crew members, especially those monitoring our communications and sensor arrays, knew better. The signal we'd detected wasn't random cosmic noise or equipment malfunction. It was structured, purposeful, designed to carry information across vast distances, and the hum was getting stronger every day. It came every night now, right around 0300 ship time, a low-frequency pulse that seemed to resonate through the hull itself, creating harmonics that our instruments could detect but couldn't properly analyze. Our computers could measure the signal's frequency and amplitude, but they couldn't decode its meaning or purpose. The dreams were getting more detailed as well. The stone city had evolved from a simple collection of pillars into a vast metropolis of impossible architecture, towers that twisted into geometric patterns that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, bridges that spanned empty air without visible support, gardens where something like plants grew in fractal patterns that suggested mathematical intelligence rather than biological evolution. "You're all having the same dream," Lieutenant Santos whispered to me during one of our shifts. "I've talked to 8 crew members now, same exact imagery, same architectural details, same sense of being observed." That afternoon, as I was running routine diagnostics on the navigation console, something unprecedented happened. The screens began displaying data I'd never seen before, complex mathematical sequences that seemed to flow across the display like living things, equations that our computers recognized as mathematically valid but couldn't solve or interpret. Dr. Chen studied the readouts with growing excitement and fear. "These are gravitational field calculations for objects moving at relativistic speeds," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And these coordinate sets, they're not referencing locations in our solar system." "What do you mean?" She pointed to a series of numbers that pulsed with soft blue light. "These coordinates correspond to stellar positions in the direction of Proxima Centauri, 4.5 light years away. Whatever's generating this data is calculating trajectories for interstellar travel." The implications hit me like a physical blow. We weren't just observing a visitor from another star system, we were potentially witnessing a navigation system in operation, technology that could calculate paths across distances that human science could barely comprehend. That night, the hum changed dramatically. Instead of the steady, rhythmic pulse we'd grown accustomed to, it began to modulate, rising and falling in pitch to create what almost sounded like a melody. Complex harmonics wove together in patterns that reminded me of whale songs or bird calls, communication attempts by an intelligence trying to bridge the gap between species. And for the first time, it seemed to be responding directly to us. Lieutenant Santos had been experimenting with our communications array, broadcasting mathematical sequences toward Oumuamua to see if we could provoke a response. When she transmitted a series of prime numbers, the hum shifted immediately. The pitch changes began to mirror our transmission with perfect accuracy, as if something was learning our patterns and reflecting them back to us. "It's definitely artificial intelligence," she reported to Commander Hale with barely contained excitement, "and it's responding to our transmissions in real time, despite the distance and communication delay." Hale slammed her hand on the conference table hard enough to make the holographic displays flicker. "Enough! Oumuamua is an interstellar asteroid, period. The signal anomalies are equipment interference amplified by solar radiation. The course corrections are caused by outgassing from exotic ices we don't understand, and the dreams are stress-induced hallucinations brought on by prolonged deep space exposure." But even as she spoke, her conviction seemed to be crumbling. The evidence was overwhelming, the anomalies too numerous and consistent to dismiss as coincidence or misinterpretation. 2 days later, everything changed in a way that made Hale's denials impossible to maintain. We were still 300,000 kilometers away when our sensors detected something that violated every assumption we'd made about the object's nature: a pulse of visible light emanating from Oumuamua's surface, not reflected sunlight bouncing off metallic surfaces, but active illumination generated from within the object itself. The flash lasted only seconds, but it was unmistakably directed toward us, a brief but brilliant beacon that lit up our sensors like a searchlight. Oumuamua was watching us just as intently as we were watching it. Then it did something that shattered the last vestiges of skepticism among our crew. Instead of continuing its escape trajectory out of the solar system, the object began to decelerate. Not gradually, as might be expected from natural forces, but with the kind of precision that indicated powered flight and intentional navigation. Oumuamua was slowing down, adjusting its course to match our approach vector, waiting for us to catch up. "That's not possible," Commander Hale whispered, staring at the tracking data with the expression of someone watching their worldview collapse in real time. "Natural objects don't do that. Asteroids don't change course to accommodate approaching spacecraft." At that moment, our long-range sensors detected multiple new contacts on the edge of the solar system, objects moving inward from interstellar space at velocities that suggested they weren't bound by conventional physics. Each new arrival was roughly the same size and configuration as Oumuamua, approaching from different vectors with the kind of coordination that implied central control. Oumuamua hadn't been alone. It had been the Scout, the Advanced Reconnaissance Unit, announcing something much larger was on its way. And now, with our pursuit of the first visitor, we had confirmed what it had been sent to discover. Humanity was technologically advanced enough to detect interstellar objects, curious enough to investigate them, and brave enough to chase them across the solar system. We were ready for contact. "We're turning back. Now." Commander Hale's order cut through the bridge like a blade, sharp and final. Through the main view screen, we could see 5 additional objects approaching from different vectors at speeds that made our own fusion-powered vessel look like a child's toy. Each newcomer displayed the same elongated configuration as Oumuamua, the same metallic surface characteristics, the same impossible precision of movement. "Sir," I protested, my voice cracking with the strain of the moment, "this is the greatest discovery in human history. We can't just turn around and run." We can and we will, Hale replied, her voice carrying the kind of authority that comes from decades of command experience. Whatever's happening out here, we're not equipped to handle it. Our mission was observation and reconnaissance. We've observed, now we report back to Earth and let people with better resources and bigger weapons figure out what to do next. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her scientific training warring with her survival instincts. Commander, we're scientists. This is what we trained for our entire careers. We can't walk away from first contact with non-human intelligence. First contact? Hale's laugh had a hysterical edge that made everyone on the bridge uncomfortable. Look at the tactical display, Doctor. 5 objects appearing simultaneously, moving at speeds that violate known physics, responding to signals from something we've been chasing for weeks. This isn't first contact. This is a coordinated military operation. We're looking at the opening moves of an invasion. But Lieutenant Santos had been analysing the sensor data with the kind of intensity that only comes from genuine curiosity rather than fear. Sir, the new objects aren't heading for Earth. They're moving to intercept us. Their projected trajectories are designed to rendezvous with the Horizon Breaker. That's supposed to make me feel better? Hale's voice rose slightly, betraying the stress she was trying to hide. It means they're interested in communication, not conquest, Dr. Chen argued. If they wanted to attack Earth, they wouldn't need to intercept a single research vessel first. They could have bypassed us completely and headed straight for our homeworld. The debate that followed revealed deep philosophical fractures in our crew. Half supported Hale's decision to abort the mission and return to Earth with what we'd learned. The other half believed we had a moral responsibility to make contact, to represent humanity in what might be our species' most important moment. We're running critically low on fuel, Chief Engineer Tanaka pointed out with the kind of brutal honesty that engineers are famous for. Even if we started the return burn right now, we'd be cutting it dangerously close. Any delays, any extended operations, and we'll be stranded out here hoping for a rescue mission that might not come. That sobered everyone. The fuel situation had become more than just a logistical concern. It was now a matter of survival. We could choose between first contact and getting home alive, but probably not both. Then the decision is simple, Hale declared. We return to Earth immediately and let someone else deal with this situation. We'll report everything we've observed and let the proper authorities decide how to proceed. What if there isn't time? I asked, surprising myself with the boldness of the question. What if this is humanity's only chance? What if they're testing us and running away means we fail the test? Hale's eyes narrowed dangerously. Are you questioning my orders, Officer Blake? Sir, I'm questioning whether we have the right to make this decision for all of humanity. 7 billion people, and their first contact with alien intelligence is going to be determined by 23 scared astronauts floating at the edge of the solar system. You're relieved of duty, Blake. Report to your quarters immediately. But as I turned to leave, my career probably in ruins, Santos spoke up with the kind of quiet urgency that makes everyone listen. Commander, we're receiving a new transmission from Oumuamua. This one's different. The signal wasn't the familiar hum we'd grown accustomed to. This was obviously artificial, complex, unmistakably designed to carry information. Mathematical sequences that resolved into geometric patterns, followed by what could only be described as blueprints. Technical diagrams showing spacecraft configurations, engine designs, navigation systems. And embedded within the data stream was something that made everyone on the bridge go silent. A detailed star map showing our solar system, with Earth clearly marked, and a trajectory leading toward Proxima Centauri and the nearest, potentially habitable worlds. But the most unsettling part was what appeared at the end of the transmission, a countdown timer, numbers decreasing in real time, showing we had less than 18 hours before some kind of deadline. It's not an ultimatum, Dr. Chen said, her voice filled with scientific excitement rather than fear. It's an invitation. They're showing us how to modify our engines for faster-than-light travel. The technical specifications are incredibly advanced, but they're designed to be understandable by a species at our level of development. Departure to where? Hale asked, though her voice had lost some of its earlier authority. Proxima Centauri. They're inviting us to visit their home system, to see their civilization, to join some kind of interstellar community. We're not going anywhere, Hale declared, but her words carried less conviction now. The crew was looking at her not with respect, but with something approaching pity. The universe had just offered humanity the stars, and she was preparing to say no. That night, confined to my quarters under something resembling house arrest, the dreams came stronger than ever, but this time the stone city wasn't empty. Figures moved between the towering pillars, tall, graceful beings made of light and mathematics. They weren't building the structures, they were tending them, maintaining them, as if the entire city was a kind of garden that required constant care. The beings communicated without words, their thoughts flowing between them like music made visible. They were working together with perfect coordination, but not in the mechanical way of a hive mind. Each individual retained their own personality, their own perspective, while contributing to something larger than themselves. And in the center of the city, standing upright like a monument or temple, was a familiar shape, Oumuamua, no longer tumbling through space, but planted firmly in the ground, surrounded by its creators. It pulsed with soft light, a beacon calling to visitors who might never come. I woke, understanding what we were really being offered. Not conquest or subjugation, but partnership, the chance to join something magnificent, something that spanned star systems and connected civilizations across the galaxy. When I arrived at the mess hall for breakfast, I found half the crew waiting. Dr. Chen, Lieutenant Santos, Chief Engineer Tanaka, and others who had decided that some opportunities were worth any risk. "We can't let her turn us around," Santos said quietly. "This isn't just about us, it's about the future of human civilization." "What are you suggesting?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Mutiny," Dr. Chen said, the word hanging in the recycled air like a confession. "It's the only way to save humanity from missing the most important opportunity in our history." Through the observation windows, Oumuamua continued its patient wait while 5 more visitors approached from the darkness between stars. The countdown timer showed 17 hours and 36 minutes remaining. 17 hours to make the most important decision in human history, and we were running out of time. The mutiny began at 0847 ship time when Chief Engineer Tanaka quietly locked out the main engine controls from the bridge. "Routine maintenance," she replied calmly when Commander Hale demanded an explanation over the intercom. "Should be back online in, approximately 16 hours and 47 minutes. Just enough time for the alien deadline to expire, forcing a decision none of us were authorized to make. Dr. Chen appeared at my quarters with Santos and 2 other crew members. "Sorry about the confinement, Blake, but we needed Hale to believe you weren't involved in the planning. Are you with us?" I looked out through the small porthole at Oumuamua, now close enough to see that its surface wasn't composed of natural rock or ice. Instead, it appeared to be made of flat, geometric panels that caught and reflected sunlight in patterns too regular to be anything but artificial construction. "What exactly are we doing?" I asked. "Making history," Santos replied, "or dying gloriously in the attempt. Either way, we're not going to be the generation that turned away from the stars." As we approached the alien object over the following hours, Oumuamua began to change before our eyes. The structure that had appeared to be solid was revealing itself to be something far more complex and beautiful. Panels slid apart along invisible seams, unfolding like origami made of metal and crystallized light. What had looked like a simple elongated asteroid was transforming into something that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human eyes were designed to perceive. "It's not a ship," I realized, watching the impossible geometry unfold. "It's not even a probe in any sense we understand." "What is it?" Santos asked. "It's a message a three-dimensional message that could only be read when we got close enough to see it unfold, to witness the transformation. The unfolding continued for hours, revealing layer upon layer of intricate structure. What emerged was something that looked like a crystal cathedral crossed with a mathematical theorem, beautiful beyond description and utterly alien in its design principles. The ship's communication system activated without our input, filling the bridge with sound unlike anything we'd ever heard. Not quite music, not quite language, but something that seemed to bypass our ears entirely and speak directly to our consciousness. And embedded in that cosmic symphony, we could hear individual voices, billions of them thinking in harmony, creating a collective intelligence that spanned star systems. "My God," Dr. Chen whispered, "it's not just a machine, it's alive." The realization hit us all simultaneously. The object we'd been pursuing wasn't a spacecraft in any conventional sense. It was a living entity, a form of life so advanced that it could manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, reshaping itself according to need and purpose. Oumuamua had finished its transformation, revealing itself to be a complex crystalline structure that seemed to capture and amplify the light of distant stars. It pulsed with internal illumination, patterns of color flowing across its surface like thoughts made visible. Commander Hale arrived on the bridge, looking haggard and defeated. "Blake, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Do you really believe we're doing the right thing?" I met her eyes, seeing the weight of command and the burden of impossible decisions. "Sir, I believe we're doing the only thing we can do. Humanity has been wondering if we're alone in the universe for thousands of years. Now we have an answer, and it's trying to communicate with us. How could we possibly turn away?" Hale nodded slowly, then moved to the main viewport to stare at the transformed alien structure. "I've been a military officer my whole adult life, trained to see threats, to protect human interests, to maintain the security of our species. But this is bigger than anything I was trained for." The countdown reached its final hour. Whatever was going to happen would happen soon, with or without our official permission. As if responding to our conversation, the alien structure began to emit a new type of signal, not mathematical sequences or technical blueprints, but something that registered as a perfect reproduction of human neural activity. Brainwave patterns captured during our weeks of observation and now being played back to us with incredible precision. The dreams, the visions of the Stone City, they hadn't been random hallucinations brought on by deep space isolation. They had been Oumuamua learning how to think like us, studying our consciousness, preparing to communicate in terms we could understand. And now, finally, it was ready to speak our language. The communication began with something that transcended the boundary between music and mathematics. Not the mechanical signals we'd grown accustomed to, but something that resonated with emotions I didn't know I had. Melodies that seemed to unlock memories from childhood and connect them to concepts that belonged to advanced physics. "It's beautiful," Lieutenant Santos whispered, tears streaming down her face as the harmonics washed over us. But Commander Hale was studying the technical readouts, her military training asserting itself even in this moment of wonder. It's not just aesthetic communication. The signal is carrying massive amounts of data embedded in the harmonic structures. This is information transfer on a scale we've never seen before. Dr. Chen was working frantically to decode the information stream. It's a language, but not like any human language. Mathematical concepts translated into musical notation with visual components that our computers can barely process. She activated the main display, and we gasped at what appeared. The stone city from our shared dreams, rendered in perfect detail and obviously real. Towers that spiraled into impossible geometries, bridges that spanned empty space without visible support, gardens where crystalline structures grew in patterns that suggested both mathematical precision and organic beauty. It's showing us where it came from, I realized. The images continued in a flowing narrative that told the story of an entire civilization, their evolution from biological beings confined to a single world to creatures of pure energy and crystallized thought who could travel between stars. Their transformation of entire solar systems into works of art and engineering that served both practical and aesthetic purposes. Their patient search across the galaxy for other forms of intelligent life. They're ancient, Dr. Chen said, her voice filled with awe. These images span millions of years of history. They've been exploring the galaxy since before Earth had complex life forms. The display shifted to show star maps that trace the paths of countless expeditions across our local galactic region. Each world they'd visited was marked with symbols indicating the type and level of intelligence they'd found. Most were marked with symbols we interpreted as primitive or pre-technological. A few showed more advanced markings. Then we saw our own solar system, marked with a symbol we didn't recognize but which seemed to pulse with significance. More images followed, showing Earth throughout its geological history. The rise and fall of the dinosaurs, captured in time-lapse imagery that could only have come from direct observation. The emergence of early human ancestors. The development of agriculture, cities, technology, all of it recorded and catalogued by patient observers who had been watching our species evolve. They've been monitoring us for millennia, I said, the implications staggering. Oumuamua wasn't their first visit to our solar system, it was just the first time they decided to make their presence known. But why now? Hale asked. What changed? The answer appeared in the form of recent images, human technology advancing exponentially over the past century, the invention of radio and television broadcasting our presence to the stars, our first tentative steps into space with satellites and lunar missions, the development of deep space monitoring networks capable of detecting interstellar objects, and finally the launch of the Horizon Breaker itself, humanity's first serious attempt at deep space exploration beyond our own solar system. We passed a test, Dr. Chen said, her voice filled with wonder and trepidation. By coming out here, by pursuing an unknown object despite the risks and the distance, we proved that we're ready for contact. The beings who had sent Oumuamua were part of something vast and ancient, a galactic community of species that had transcended their biological origins and learned to travel between stars not in crude metal ships, but by encoding their consciousness into crystalline matrices that could survive the vast emptiness of interstellar space for thousands of years. It's an ambassador, I said, understanding flooding through me like cold water. It came here to meet us, to study us, to determine if we're ready to join their civilization. The communication continued, showing us images of other species that had been contacted throughout galactic history. Some had welcomed the visitors with curiosity and wonder, embracing the opportunity to learn and grow. Others had responded with fear and violence, attacking the ambassadors and retreating into isolation. Those who embraced contact were shown images of transformation and elevation. Their consciousness expanded, their technology advanced by millions of years, their species lifted up to become part of the galactic community. They learned to manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, to travel faster than light, to communicate across vast distances through quantum entanglement. But those who rejected contact were left alone to develop at their own pace, some eventually reaching the stars through their own efforts, others destroying themselves in wars and environmental catastrophe, still others simply stagnating and never advancing beyond their home worlds. It's a choice, Dr. Chen said, her voice barely above a whisper. They're offering us an opportunity, but only if we're willing to accept it. What kind of opportunity? Santos asked, though I suspected we all already knew. The answer came as technical specifications that made our most advanced technology look like stone tools, blueprints for faster-than-light travel that operated by folding space-time itself, unlimited clean energy extracted from quantum vacuum fluctuations, medical technology that could heal any disease and extend human lifespan indefinitely, manufacturing processes that could create any any material structure by manipulating matter at the atomic level, but even as we marveled at the possibilities, there was an undercurrent of something that felt like warning. There's a cost, I said, studying the more complex diagrams that seem to show human beings transformed in fundamental ways. We would have to change, not just our technology, but ourselves. We'd have to become something more than human. The communication showed us what that transformation might look like. Humans enhanced with crystalline neural implants that connected our consciousness to the galactic network. Bodies that could survive in space without protection, drawing energy directly from cosmic radiation. Minds that could exist independently of biological brains, preserved in crystalline matrices like the one that powered Oumuamua itself. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "The countdown," Santos said suddenly, her voice cutting through our wonder. "We have less than 30 minutes left. If we're going to accept their offer, we have to choose now." "And if we refuse?" Hale asked, though her voice had lost all trace of the authority she'd wielded just hours earlier. The display showed Oumuamua folding back into its original configuration, resuming its trajectory toward interstellar space, disappearing forever into the darkness between stars. The other approaching objects would follow, and humanity would be left alone with the knowledge that we had been offered the stars and chosen to remain earthbound. This was humanity's moment. Our species had reached the attention of the galactic community exactly once in our history, and we had minutes to decide our response. "We need to vote," Dr. Chen announced over the ship's intercom. "Every crew member gets a say in this decision because it affects the entire future of human civilization." As the crew gathered in the main conference room, I remained on the bridge, staring out at the crystalline structure that contained an alien ambassador waiting patiently for our answer. The weight of the moment was crushing. 23 human beings making a choice that would echo through history. Through the viewport, I could see the 5 other alien objects drawing closer, their surfaces beginning to transform and unfold just as Oumuamua had done. They were preparing for our answer, ready to welcome us into their community or bid us farewell forever. The countdown showed 18 minutes remaining. The debate that followed was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. Every crew member spoke, some arguing passionately for accepting the alien offer, others advocating for caution and a return to Earth with the knowledge we'd gained. Dr. Chen made the case for acceptance with scientific precision. "This is evolution," she argued. "Every species that survives long enough faces this choice: remain what they are and eventually stagnate, or transcend their limitations and become part of something greater. We're being offered knowledge that could solve every problem humanity faces: energy, disease, mortality, the limitations of biology itself." Chief Tanaka countered with engineering pragmatism. "We don't understand their technology or their motivations. Accepting transformation from beings we've just met could be the end of humanity as we know it. What if we lose ourselves in the process? What if their idea of improvement isn't compatible with human nature?" Lieutenant Santos spoke for those who felt the pull of adventure and discovery. "We became explorers because we wanted to push boundaries, to see what lay beyond the horizon. Now we're being offered the ultimate horizon. The stars themselves, and the knowledge of civilizations that have existed for millions of years. How can we turn away from that?" Commander Hale, surprising everyone, argued for acceptance from a strategic standpoint. "I've spent my career thinking about threats to human security. The biggest threat we face isn't invasion or conquest, it's isolation. If we refuse this offer, we'll be alone in the universe, developing at our own slow pace while advanced civilizations exist just beyond our reach. Eventually, we might destroy ourselves or stagnate into extinction. This could be our only chance to survive as a species." The vote was closer than I'd expected. 11 crew members for accepting the alien offer, 9 against, with 3 abstentions from those who felt unqualified to make such a momentous decision. I cast the deciding ballot. "It's done," Dr. Chen announced. "We accept the offer." But even as she spoke, Chief Engineer Tanaka was reviewing our technical situation. "There's something we need to discuss," she said grimly. "We've been drifting toward Oumuamua for hours while the engines were offline. At our current trajectory and velocity, we're now too close to attempt a return burn, even if we wanted to change our minds." "What are you saying?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. "I'm saying we're committed whether we like it or not. We can either accept their technology and hope they can get us home safely, or drift here until our life support fails. The choice has been made for us by physics and fuel consumption." The realization was sobering. Had we voted for transcendence and evolution, or had desperation and circumstance forced our hand? Would we have made the same choice if we'd had unlimited fuel and a guaranteed path home? But before anyone could voice these doubts, Oumuamua responded to our decision. The crystalline structure began moving toward our ship with fluid grace, extending what could only be described as a docking mechanism toward our main airlock. The connection formed itself like liquid metal flowing and reshaping until it created a perfect seal with our hull. "Atmospheric analysis?" I asked. "Breathable," Santos reported, studying her instruments. "Oxygen-nitrogen mix with trace elements I can't identify. Temperature and pressure within human tolerance ranges." The connecting passage defied every assumption I'd made about alien technology. The walls appeared to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft bioluminescence, responding to our presence with patterns of light that seemed almost welcoming. The corridor felt warm, organic, more like walking through the interior of some vast organism than a manufactured structure. At the end of the passage, we found ourselves in a chamber that challenged my understanding of three-dimensional space. The room felt impossibly large, much vaster than the external dimensions of the crystalline structure should have allowed. And floating in the center, supported by nothing visible, was our host. The ambassador looked almost human, bipedal, roughly our size, with features that suggested both intelligence and benevolence, but it was composed entirely of crystallized light, its form shifting between solid and energy states as we watched. When it spoke, the words formed directly in our minds without passing through our ears. "Welcome. You have traveled far to reach this moment." "As have you," Dr. Chen replied, her voice filled with awe. "How long have you been watching us?" "Since your species first looked up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond your world, we have been patient, waiting for you to develop the wisdom and courage necessary for contact." "And do we have that wisdom?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "That remains to be seen. You face a choice that will define your species for millions of years to come." "The technology you're offering," Santos said carefully. "What's the real cost? What do we have to give up to receive these gifts?" "Change. To join the galactic community, you must evolve beyond your current limitations. Your consciousness must expand beyond the boundaries of individual minds. Your bodies must be enhanced to survive in environments that would destroy biological organisms. Your society must learn to function as a unified entity rather than competing tribes." "You're talking about losing our humanity," Commander Hale said, voicing the fear that haunted all of us. "I am speaking of becoming more than human. Every species that joins our community retains its essential nature while transcending the limitations that once defined them. You will still be yourselves, but you will be capable of so much more." The ambassador showed us visions of other transformed species, beings that had retained their unique characteristics while gaining abilities that seemed godlike by human standards. They moved between star systems as easily as we moved between rooms. They communicated across galactic distances instantaneously. They created works of art and engineering on the scale of solar systems. "And if we refuse?" Dr. Chen asked. then you continue your current path. You develop at your own pace, face your challenges alone, make your own mistakes and discoveries. Both outcomes are common among intelligent species. The ambassador projected images of worlds that had chosen independence, some that had eventually reached the stars through their own efforts after millions of years of struggle, others that had destroyed themselves in wars over resources and ideological differences, still others that had simply stagnated and never advanced beyond their home systems. How long do we have to decide? I asked. The window for transformation closes with my departure. The process must begin within this solar system using the crystalline matrices we have brought. If you choose to accept, the change must commence immediately. What about Earth? What about the rest of humanity? Your choice speaks for your species. If you accept transformation, the knowledge and technology will flow back to your homeworld through quantum entanglement. If you refuse, your planet will never see us again. The weight of that responsibility was crushing. 23 crew members making a decision that would affect 7 billion people and countless future generations. I need to consult with my crew, Commander Hale said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Time grows short, the window will close within 1 hour. We made our way back to the horizon breaker through the crystalline passage that had somehow become warm and familiar. In the ship's conference room, we faced the most important decision in human history with less than an hour to make it. The final debate lasted 37 minutes and covered philosophical ground that humanity had been exploring for millennia. Were we ready to transcend our biological limitations? Could we maintain our essential humanity while becoming something greater? Did we have the right to make this choice for our entire species? Commander Hale spoke last, her words carrying the weight of a lifetime spent in service to humanity. I've spent my career preparing for threats, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Everything in my training tells me this could be a trap, that we're being manipulated by forces we don't understand, that accepting this offer could mean the end of humanity as we've always known it. She paused, looking around at faces illuminated by the soft glow of emergency lighting. But I've also learned that sometimes the biggest threat is the opportunity you don't take. If we walk away from this, we might be condemning humanity to exactly the kind of isolation and stagnation that destroys civilizations. We could spend the next million years struggling toward goals that are being offered to us right now. So what are you recommending, Commander? I asked. I'm recommending that for the first time in my military career, I choose wonder over fear. I choose the possibility of becoming something greater over the certainty of remaining limited. She stood up slowly. We accept the offer. The decision was unanimous. The ambassador was waiting in the crystalline chamber when we returned, its form now pulsing with increased energy. Around it, the walls had transformed into complex geometric patterns that seemed to extend into dimensions I couldn't quite perceive. You have chosen. Are you ready to begin? What exactly does the process involve? Dr. Chen asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her apprehension. Your consciousness will be temporarily separated from your biological matrix and enhanced with crystalline neural interfaces. Your memories and personality will remain intact, but your capacity for perception and thought will be expanded exponentially. Your bodies will be modified to survive in space and process energy directly from cosmic radiation. Will it hurt? Santos asked. Pain is a biological response to tissue damage. What you will experience is closer to awakening from a dream you didn't realize you were having. Crystalline pedestals rose from the floor of the chamber, one for each crew member. They pulsed with soft light that seemed to beckon us forward. Place your hands on the interface crystals. The process will begin immediately and cannot be reversed. I looked around at my crewmates, 23 humans about to become something unprecedented in our species' history. Whatever happens, we face this together. One by one, we stepped forward and placed our hands on the warm crystal surfaces. The moment my palm made contact, the universe exploded into dimensions of experience I never could have imagined. My consciousness expanded outward like a shockwave, suddenly encompassing perspectives and perceptions that no human mind was designed to contain. I could see through the ambassador's crystalline senses, perceive quantum fluctuations, as clearly as visible light, feel gravitational currents flowing between planets like ocean tides. But it wasn't overwhelming. Instead, it felt like waking up from a lifetime of partial blindness, finally seeing colours and patterns that had always existed, but which human senses couldn't detect. The enhancement wasn't replacing my human consciousness. It was revealing depths and capabilities that had always been there, waiting for the right catalyst to unlock them. Around me, I could sense my crewmates undergoing the same transformation. Their thoughts brushed against mine, not invasively, but like distant music that enriched the symphony of consciousness we were all joining. We remained individuals, but we were also becoming part of something infinitely larger. Welcome to the galactic community. Through our enhanced perception, we could see the true scope of what we were joining. Millions of species scattered across countless star systems, all connected through a network of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. Not a hive mind that erased individuality, but a voluntary association of evolved beings who chose to share knowledge and experience across impossible distances. Earth appeared in our shared vision, a blue marble floating in space, home to billions of people who had no idea their future had just changed forever. But we could see the potential connections forming, quantum entanglements that would allow the enhancement to spread gradually through human civilization over the coming decades. We hadn't just transformed ourselves, we had opened a door for our entire species. The process is complete. You are ready to return home. Home? I asked, surprised to find I could still speak despite the fundamental changes in my consciousness. Your mission was to observe and report. Now you have something extraordinary to report. Your enhanced abilities will allow you to share this experience with your species in ways that words could never convey. Are we still human? Commander Hale asked, her voice carrying new harmonics that seemed to resonate with the crystalline structure around us. The ambassador's form shifted through colors that conveyed amusement and deep affection. You are what humanity is becoming. You are the bridge between what your species was and what it will be. Go home. Share what you have learned. Help your species understand that evolution is not loss, but growth beyond imagining. The journey back to Earth took 3 days subjective time, but our enhanced consciousness made the experience unlike anything we could have imagined in our previous existence. We weren't simply traveling through space. We were experiencing the voyage as a flowing river of sensation and discovery, perceiving the solar system as a living entity with currents of energy and information flowing between all its components. When Earth finally appeared on our enhanced vision, I felt a connection to the world of my birth that transcended anything I'd experienced as a purely biological human. I could sense the presence of billions of human minds, all unknowingly on the threshold of transformation, all carrying within them the same potential for growth and transcendence that we had just realized. Control, this is Horizon Breaker requesting permission to dock, Commander Hale said, her voice carrying new frequencies that made the communication feel like music. Horizon Breaker, welcome home. The entire world is waiting to hear what you discovered out there. I smiled, looking out at the blue marble that had given birth to our species, knowing we were about to give birth to something greater in return. Control, I said, my enhanced consciousness already beginning to share glimpses of our experience through quantum channels. I was only beginning to understand, you're not going to believe what we have to tell you. Through our transformed perception, we could already see the changes beginning. The enhancement was spreading, carried by quantum entanglements that connected consciousness across space and time. Within months, the first Earthborn humans would begin displaying enhanced abilities. Within years, our entire species would be taking its first steps toward the stars. We had gone to meet a visitor from another star system. We had returned as ambassadors of a new age for humanity. The first contact was complete, but the real journey had only just begun. Epilogue. 10 years later, The changes came slowly at first, just as the ambassador had promised. Enhanced intuition among scientists led to breakthrough discoveries in physics and engineering. Artists began creating works that seemed to tap into aesthetic principles no human culture had ever conceived. Children were born with an innate understanding of mathematical concepts that had previously required years of study to master. Then the more dramatic transformations began. Humans who could survive in hard vacuum by processing cosmic radiation directly, minds that could communicate across interstellar distances through quantum entanglement, consciousness that could exist independently of biological brains, preserved in crystalline matrices that could survive the journey between stars. Today, Earth is home to 3 billion enhanced humans and growing, with more choosing transformation every day. Our cities reach toward the stars, powered by technologies that merge human creativity with the accumulated knowledge of galactic civilization. Our ships travel between star systems as easily as our ancestors crossed oceans, carrying explorers and ambassadors to worlds we could never have imagined. The deep space monitoring stations that ring our solar system no longer just listen for potential threats. They serve as beacons, broadcasting messages of welcome to young civilizations that might be ready for contact. We've learned that we're part of an ancient cycle. Species that reach technological maturity inevitably face the choice between transformation and isolation. Some choose to join the galactic community, others prefer to develop at their own pace. Both choices are respected, both paths are valid. The universe is large enough for every form of consciousness to find its place. But for those ready to transcend their limitations, for those willing to become more than they ever imagined possible, the door stands open. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, crystalline ambassadors drift patiently, waiting for the signals that indicate another species has developed the wisdom and courage necessary for contact. Just as Oumuamua waited for us, when new civilizations detect those signals, when they choose to pursue visitors from distant stars despite the risks and uncertainties, they join a tradition that stretches back millions of years. They become part of something greater than any single world, any single species, any single form of consciousness. They become part of the community of minds that spans the galaxy, united not by conquest or coercion, but by choice, by the decision to grow beyond their origins and explore possibilities they could never have achieved alone. Welcome, we say to each new species that reaches for transformation. Welcome to the galactic community. Welcome to the next stage of evolution. Welcome home.